Good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be sitting here with three extraordinary and thoughtful leaders of our Jewish world. Our communities have done a spectacular job pivoting and reacting to COVID-19 and the immediate issues that it presented to us, including the impact it's had on our most vulnerable. But as we are dealing with this pandemic, it's time really for us to look forward. There will be light at the end of this dark tunnel. And I want us to have a conversation, and I want us to be thinking about what we want our Jewish world to look like when this pandemic is over, however long that is. And so I'm really privileged to have three people who can help us talk about this. I want to start with you, Rabbi Cosgrove. As a rabbi, a spiritual leader, just coming out of the high holidays where synagogues had to think about things differently, what have you learned from this pandemic, and what are you thinking about moving forward about spiritual life and communal life?
Jay, thank you. And it's great to be on this panel with you and with Lisa and with Paula. The high holidays were a thrilling experience in the sense that we engaged with members and non-members at a level that we had never experienced before. We went virtual, we went online, and we were able to create community locally, nationally, and globally. And what it did for us as a synagogue community is it alerted us to the possibilities to rethink all of the assumptions of American Jewish life, how large synagogues like my own interface with other communities, how we resource together, how we think about those who are in need of being served in new models. What does membership mean in this day and age when you're not necessarily defined by your local community? What are the financial models that can sustain both large communities and small communities all at once? Are there opportunities for resources to be shared amongst Jewish communities? I think JFNA is a perfectly positioned organization to think about how local communities can work collaboratively in order to serve a greater good. So I think it was a wow moment, an eye-opening moment, and a moment that we are actively thinking forward how to reconstruct American Jewish life.
Paula, I want to turn to you now, and I want to actually turn to a big part of your background that not everyone probably knows, which is you really come with a very significant business experience. And the Jewish community is based on businesses, and we know that the economy of this country is going to be hard hit for a long time. From a business perspective, and I'll get to your lay side and your communal side afterwards, but from a business perspective, what should we be learning about how we run our Jewish businesses going forward?
I'd like to echo what the rabbi just said. Thank you for having me on this panel. It's a pleasure to be here with Rabbi and with Lisa and you too, Jay. I think we are at an inflection point. We need to think about how our Jewish institutions move forward, how partnerships are formed, how we collaborate, and how to look at each of them individually and collectively as business opportunities. How will we think about innovation? How will we need to pivot? It's definitely not going to be business as usual. And what does that mean? And how do we look out to the future in order to be able to be ahead of the game? Because we're forever changed. And we're at a point where it's not just COVID that has affected our economy. It is the combination of COVID, the effect on the economy, the reckoning of racial injustice in our society. How are we going to think, and not to mention climate change, how are we going to think about all of those things and others as we anticipate moving forward to be able to answer and respond and survive?
Thanks, Paula. Lisa, no foundation that I'm aware of in the Jewish world has really pivoted and led as much as your foundation under your leadership. And I, first of all, want to thank you on behalf of the Jewish world for the work that your foundation has done and that you have personally led. But you are a major stakeholder in this, and your foundation has funded innovation for a long time, and you have done a lot of things. From your prism that you look at things, how are you leading your foundation differently, and how is the foundation thinking differently about the community?
Thanks, Jay, and thanks to the whole JFNA team. It's great to be on this wonderful panel, and I agree with so much of it, what has been said so far. Look, we're looking at this as an opportunity to forge a 21st century Jewish community that's more relevant, more inclusive, and more sustainable. And we see two key pathways that I think will enable all of us to proactively reshape what our community looks like in the future. And one is the boundaries are dissolving. We're seeing what it looks like to not have geographical and institutional, denominational, ideological silos. And it's been exciting. We've had an amazing array of access to local offerings, national and global offerings. We're reaching exponentially more people. And we feel like that is a great leverage point and really important opportunity to create previously unimaginable partnerships that cut across geography, cut across denominations, local and national partnerships, and then multiple types of institutions sharing space and talent and services. So our hope is that when this crisis ends, we will continue to connect and learn and pray across boundaries that will transcend our polarization and that will benefit from the best of what Jewish life can offer. And to that point, one other pathway that I think is really crucial is for us to be thinking, and this is how we've been approaching this moment, preserving our key assets and functions, but not necessarily every single one of our institutions. Our functions are spirituality, education, culture, human services. Our assets are the resources, like the people and the talent, the ideas and the buildings that enable us to deliver these functions. And we can't focus on preserving every single institution. We're not going to be able to do that. But if we leverage the very best of our assets and make the most of what we have, we can really emerge a lot stronger as a community. And I think we all need to be asking ourselves right now, what functions, services, what content do our constituents really want and really need? And how can we deliver them in new and relevant and more sustainable ways so that we emerge much stronger in the future?
So we all are engaged in institutions, and this Jewish world was built on institutions. But you've all kind of talked about something which is about, frankly, who the audience is, who's our consumers, how do we define what it means to be Jewish and in the new world that we're going to be living in? How do we do that pivot? Paula, you alluded to obviously Jews of color, and we have all been talking for too long about how we become a more open community. And I think this is a moment for us to become more open.
Well, it is a moment. We've been marching toward this moment for a very long time. And I think because of what has happened this summer with George Floyd, because of COVID, we are finally realizing that what has been talked about, what has been said is true, that Jews of color and Jews who identify as non-Ashkenazi Jews are a large and growing part of the Jewish population. And if we don't recognize it, embrace it, and welcome it, then we as a Jewish people run the risk of just not preserving who we are, what we stand for. And there are any number of organizations, and I'll just name a few: the Jews of Color Field Building Initiative, Dimensions, the Weinberg Foundation, on whose board I sit, has made a conscious and deliberate effort and commitment to learn where Jews of color are, because often we are not included in everyday Jewish life. Not because we don't want to be, it's because often Jews of color don't feel welcomed in the spaces. So it is up to those of us who are active, who have networks, to be sure to reach in, reach out, and embrace, and bring the circle, bring us all under the tent, into the tent, to make a stronger, more vibrant, more inclusive, and loving Jewish community.
I'm also going to push on Rabbi Cosgrove a little bit, because a lot of what we see ourselves as Jews is institutional Jews and denominationally defined Jews. Do you see this is an opportunity for us to try to find new ways to define our engagement and affiliation?
Yeah, Jay, I don't think that the drivers of Jewish identity of 100 years ago or the last 100 years are going to be the drivers of Jewish identity for the next 100 years. So to answer your question directly, the choice of am I joining a Reform, conservative, Orthodox synagogue? I think that toothpaste has been out of the tube for a while right now. I think as my co-panelists have said, this has just accelerated or disrupted that life to the point that now we're all facing up to the realities. I think, look, at the end of the day, I'm a synagogue guy. It's in my wiring. So I think that Jews and all human beings have certain existential questions about meaning that aren't going away. I think that as long as human beings are human beings, we're going to be socially inclined. We want community. Amazing as this moment has been in terms of a virtual reality, as evidenced by the GA, I think people like being with people. And I think the moment we can be, we're going to come back into community formation and public assembly.
Good. Well, I'm going to turn to my optimistic friend, Lisa. I am enormously optimistic about the future. I just wish that we could be hugging each other and we could all be in the same room right now. I'm sure everybody that's participating in the GA wishes they were bumping into people in the hallways. Lisa, let's talk about hope. Let's talk about light. You have been, a major motivator of the innovation space and new organizations. What are you seeing that should give everybody listening to this the same kind of optimism that I'm living my life with right now?
I'm seeing incredible innovation, incredible agility. I'm seeing people coming together and crossing boundaries, as we've heard. And thankfully, and Paula, thank you for your leadership on these issues. And we are full partners with the Weinberg Foundation, with the Jews of Color Initiative, and with other initiatives that lift up the amazing richness and diversity of the Jewish community. That people are recognizing, because of what's going on in this country and around the world, that we must be more inclusive, we must be more diverse, we must celebrate the multiracial, multi-ethnic reality that we have. And I feel like there's been a lot of education, awareness raising, and there's been the creation of rock star leaders, of incredible content, of bringing in people who were never involved or haven't been lapsed for a long time and who are getting engaged in what was some of the best high holidays opportunities and options that we've ever seen. So I'm extremely optimistic about the Jewish future, but it's going to take us being proactive about shaping what we want it to look like, about being more open, inclusive, about including more diverse voices, and making sure that every single person who wants to be part of the Jewish people feels welcome, feels safe, feels respected and treated fairly. And here I really want to lift up women's leadership. It is not a coincidence that during this COVID crisis, the countries that have done the best job fighting COVID are mostly led by women. We see the good that can happen when women are in leadership roles, and everyone benefits. And I believe that we need to elevate more women into leadership now and on the other side of this crisis, so that we can benefit from the full talents of everyone in the Jewish community, and that we end on the other side of this a much more dynamic, thriving, and equitable place for all of us.
Great. Well, I think I have time for one quick answer to one quick question. In 5 years, when I bump into you in the street, after we give each other a real big hug, Tell me what you think the Jewish community is really going to have benefited from coming out of this pandemic.
What I hope that comes out of this crisis, the learnings that we took seriously, that this just isn't a moment where we're talking, that we are taking action, and that the actions we're taking will have lasting effects. And so that's what I hope when I'm hugging you on the street 5 years from now, that we're able to say, we weren't just talking. Look, it's working.
Lisa?
I'm envisioning a community that is more dynamic, more respectful of each other, less polarized, and much more creative, where all kinds of Jews from all different backgrounds can see themselves reflected in leadership and community, have a role in shaping community, and that we are living out our purpose as a Jewish people, which is ensuring that everyone is treated with dignity and respect, both within our community and outside, that we are pursuing justice and good in the world and making the world a better place. That's what we're called to do. And I hope that we are going to not do business as usual, but we're going to commit to moving to a better era where we all respect each other and we all help each other thrive as Jews and as people.
Thank you. Rabbi Cosgrove, you get the last word.
I hope that we can all look back on this moment, that though none of us would have chosen it, it reminded us all of what's really important in life. And that goes for our families, obviously that goes for ourselves, and in the Jewish community, for all of us, that it's prompted us, I hope in retrospect, to be less about turf, less about ego, less about fluff, and that it's prompted us to be far more intentional to achieve the dreams that really matter.
I want to thank my three colleagues for this very important and insightful conversation. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. I hope that this conversation continues in your communities, in small rooms, in big rooms. That's the way we're going to assure that there is real light coming out of this darkness, and how our Jewish community comes out stronger and more exciting than ever before. Thank you.